Diaspora UA, and I'm Oksana Davyda. We are welcoming you in our channel. Today, I'm pleased to greet very great guest, absolutely unique guest, Mr. Glen Grant. When I'm gonna start with your titles, I think I'm gonna be lost, but I will just simply say Baltic Security Foundation. So you're a defense expert, your experience and your knowledge and everything you're doing right now for Ukraine is priceless. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Nice to hear it.
My pleasure. Sir, I wanted to start from serious question, of course, but you know, everything is so different every hour. And you see what happened during last, I don't know, 10 hours. For me, it was night. And very great morning when I see what's going on in Ukraine. So I cannot stop myself from asking, what do you think about that great birthday cake candle Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian fighters, all Ukraine brought to Mr. Putin for his birthday? Of course, I'm talking about Crimea Bridge.
Well, I mean, I think you have to, we're not 100% sure yet that it was a Ukraine kill. I mean, there are 3 or 4 things. Firstly, I mean, it's obviously a lorry or van that it shows on the video driving down, but you can't see because the explosion is so quickly whether the explosion came from the van or whether it actually came from underneath the bridge, which is a comment from some engineers that it doesn't look as though or as if the detonation actually went down into the bridge and caused the problem. It actually looks as though the detonation came from below. In which case, if it came from below, then jolly good. That means Putin's doing it in the same way that he did with flats and you know everything that he did to try and get into the Chechen war. But let's assume that it was us and that Ukraine managed to do it. Okay, well then it's a good piece of work. I mean, first of all, it's damaged the road bridge quite badly, and they're not going to repair that in 5 minutes. And maybe if they pull all the stops out, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to do something, but even then they've got to measure all the concrete to actually check that the concrete isn't cracked in places, because you don't want to put a new bridge on bad concrete and the whole thing collapses again. Exactly the same with the railway bridge. I mean, the rail trucks were in the wrong place at the wrong time by the looks of it. And so there must be some damage to the railway because the explosion went upwards. So it may well in places have actually lifted the line, lifted the concrete off its proper foundations. So they're going to have to actually look at that properly. Now, what I've just read is that they have they've closed all the traffic. They're not selling any tickets anymore, which is one thing. They can't put a ferry across because the weather's too bad. They have got marine landing craft that they can use to shuttle things backwards and forwards. But a friend of mine who saw those very same landing craft 20 years ago, when he was working with arms control, said that they were in bad condition then. So he wouldn't like to see them going backwards and forwards across the Kerch Strait too often. But even if they do, they're not going to be doing much logistics going backwards and forwards in that way because it's not a short trip. So you're not going to be making many trips a day and you're not going to carry much each time you do it. So they've lost, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 weeks. They've lost the use of the bridge. And that, of course, also means the food logistics into Crimea for the normal population. So there's going to be some very, very unhappy people already. And they've already been told the public have been told they can only buy 3 kilos worth of food. So if you're a person who buys potatoes, you're in deep trouble because that's not going to last you very long. 3 kilos is not very much.
Yeah.
At all. So that's that. I mean, that's that side, and that means that their logistics, the logistics for the troops on the Kherson direction and north towards Zaporizhzhia. They're going to have to supply those by road direct from Russia. So that's got to come all the way across. And it's quite a long way, actually. You think, it's Mariupol, past Mariupol, then right across Melitopol and across. It's not a 5-minute journey. And they've not actually shown much evidence so far of being good at logistics. So how they're suddenly going to become good at logistics to do this is a very interesting technical question. And I think that most defense analysts will be looking very carefully to see how they actually manage to do this. Because there is a thing, when you're talking about logistics and you're fighting a war, most armies can only carry a day. That means you can carry today's food in 1 day and ammunition. So if you have to start doing stuff for civilians as well, then that drops to maybe a day in 4 days. If you can follow my logic. So that means that they're driving, they can only take 1/4 the amount of logistic because they've got all the civilians to feed as well, who might have been fed by trains coming through Crimea and by lorries coming across Crimea that won't come anymore. But that means that the army is therefore on 1/4 rations, 1/4 ammunition, 1/4, maybe 1/2 everything else. So they're going to have to slow down their operational tempo because they simply will not have the lift to keep that tempo, especially the ammunition tempo, artillery ammunition tempo. They won't have the lift to keep that going as they have been the last few weeks.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting times.
Yeah, actually now I'm not sure what is going to be the biggest damage to Russians. It's going to be damage of that concrete, or that metal is melting, or just terrible damage with that specifically bridge, or it's going to work like serious moral damage for Russian army, because spirit is damaged very, very much right now. And specifically, I'm happy to see what we can do for birthday. And I think it was great moral shock.
I think you're right. And I think that probably the people that are going to find it the hardest, I'm going to say some of the soldiers at the front line won't even know.
Yeah.
Because nobody will tell them. There's no means of telling them. It just doesn't happen like that. But the civilians in Crimea and the people who are working for the Russians in Crimea, they are now going to be in a bad way mentally, because the war has already come to them a couple of times with the attacks on the airfields, and this has gone past that now. This is their ability to escape if things go bad has now been cut off.
Yes,
and that is going to be morally extremely difficult for a lot of husbands to explain to their wives why they're still there.
Yeah, exactly. And in my opinion, that accident, very nice accident, can be as an example what we can do with all oil supply we're still getting from Russia. Actually, whole world supposed to look at that bridge, understanding what's going on in Crimea, what's going on with those people who live in Crimea. They stand in line for gas station, and they kind of locked. It's a big panic. And only one moment to understand, if you cut off oil supply from Russia on a big scale, because we're still getting oil, all world is buying oil, and including United States, we were in big trouble since first day of new administration. We cut off our oil supply right here, which we have for probably a few hundred years, and we started to buy oil from Russia. So now that little nice, beautiful accident with Crimea Bridge can show whole world how easy to cut off Russia from life, stop buying from them, stop dealing with them, and it's going to change whole world. It's going to change war, first of all, because I believe buying oil from Russia for those year and a half before war started, we made Putin great again, actually. So using that example with bridge, cut off supply, cut off connection, I think we can expect more understanding about how to stop Putin from what he's doing. And we all know we need to do that before he does something crazy as he promised.
Well, you might be being a bit hopeful, would be my view. I mean, I agree that it's a good plan, but I somehow doubt that France and Germany, in the way that they're acting at the moment, will take your very good advice on board, because I think that Germany said they're going to stop taking Russian oil. That's fair enough. I think France has already said it, but of course there are people that are still taking Russian oil. Hungary, for example. I think that it's not so much that the closing of the Kerch Bridge is the key to this, what you're saying, as much as just it's another nail in the coffin, that people will see that Russia is weak or is getting weaker. I mean, there's no oil crisis. Trust me, there's so much oil in the world.
I know.
And you've got, we can do fracking in America.
Yeah.
We can do fracking in UK. And lots of other places. The problem is only the price and the will. And I suppose you could say a little bit of negotiation with people like Saudi Arabia, which we don't maybe want to do, but sometimes you have to sup with the devil to get the bigger problem sorted out. So I don't, the oil crisis thing is just one thing. I mean, cutting Russia off from oil, well, you're going to have negotiations with India, and you're going to have negotiations with China, and neither of those are playing pro-West games at the moment, and that makes it difficult, because I mean, India buys huge amounts, China buys huge amounts, so we are being undercut, so to speak. But I think oil may be the least of his problems. I mean, yes, he's getting money, but if he can't get parts for tanks, if he can't get parts for missiles, then that's what's really going to break him down over the space of a year or two, because he can't actually replenish his stocks that he's using with the quality stuff. I mean, he's already, as you've seen, for the last 3 months, he's been using anti-aircraft missiles in the ground role, because he doesn't have enough ground missiles. The S-300, he doesn't have enough ground missiles. So he's already, doing things differently because of shortages in certain places. I think he's got deep problems, to be honest, because the army that he's produced, the new mobilized boys, they're not trained. They're pretty useless, to be honest, and they don't want to be there, as we know.
Just a vomit, yeah.
They definitely don't want to be there. So he's got problems with ground forces. So he's got to do something else, and what that something else is a big question. Whether it's a tactical nuclear weapon, whether he finds some other nasty, devious thing to do, like attacking someone else. To change the paradigm, I'm not sure. I really don't know at the moment. But during from 2014 to 2018, all the time, 2019, all the time when I was working in Ukraine and I was writing and talking, the one thing I said was, the one thing we can be sure of is he will do something else. He will do something else, and it won't be what we expect. And I think we've reached that moment again, where he will do something else and it won't be what we expect.
So do you think he reached that no return point? Absolutely. Because now we all waiting when that volcano of his mind will explode. And to my surprise, I still think world could give better response because like our administration here, our first, second guys telling us, oh yes, response gonna be huge, terrible for him if he does something. But as a woman, I understand, why men talking about after? We should talk about before. We should talk about preventing that disaster, not to sit and wait when that crazy one person, world criminal, terrorist, number one, gonna do something. And then it's gonna be our reaction. With your experience working in British Army, Royal Artillery, Minister of Defense, what do you think about that possibility? How we can prevent him instead of sitting and waiting and begging him not to do what he wants to do?
I mean, the key thing is the war is between Ukraine and Russia, and Ukraine wants to win. And therefore, in my view, the most important thing would be to enable Ukraine to win. I mean, if Putin is threatening us with doing something bad, well, is he threatening us yesterday? Yes. Today? Yes. Will he still be threatening us tomorrow? Yes. Well, he hasn't done anything since 2014 on this line. And if Ukraine is going to keep going and is going to win, which it is, then we're still going to have the same problem when they win, however they do it. So better that we do it quickly and he gets overthrown, because there is, he doesn't have time to come up with a new plan. That's what's got to happen. What we haven't done is get inside his decision cycle. We haven't got inside his thinking. We haven't used the one thing he hates is uncertainty. So the one thing we should have been giving him is uncertainty. And to be honest, we failed that the moment those two American ships turned round at the Bosphorus and did not come in when Putin was threatening everybody.
Exactly.
Had those two ships come in and sailed close to Crimea, as the British ship did, or sailed close with the British ship, I don't think this war would have started.
Exactly.
They would have understood that we were serious. But the moment
I'm sorry. We're absolutely sure that war could be prevented. Absolutely. Yeah. And we cannot use time machine to go back. But right now, I believe we can still use those lessons. We got bad lessons, bloody lessons, to do better things in the future. And looking at what's going on right now, we have almost 8 months of war. So do you think our West partners, I'm not going to go to 1994 Budapest Memorandum. It's clear, it's gone, it means nothing. But do you think now we should think about something a little bit better, different for Ukraine than just big NATO membership? Maybe with your experience, that smaller version, which we were talking all the time, especially when Boris Johnson was coming to Kyiv all the time, maybe we should think and push that mini, I don't know how to call it yet, but like Baltic Black Sea partnership. We can be together with Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, is support from Great Britain.
We can, and they're not bad ideas, but they're still only on paper. And that they won't change the war paradigm. The war paradigm is about equipment and people, and will, and you can have all the groupings that you want, but if it doesn't change those things, it doesn't change the equipment, if it doesn't change the training quality of the people, and the system for actually managing war, if it doesn't change those, you're not going to win anything. Because there won't actually be any I mean, Germany will sign anything you want on those things. Mm-hmm. They won't do any differently. I mean, if they haven't got the balls to give tanks, which they haven't, because they're frightened of Russia, then another piece of paper won't change anything. So to my mind, this is where I'm afraid America should be showing much stronger leadership than it is. It's still showing good leadership, but it could be a lot stronger. It's not showing the leadership relevant to a world war, which is what we're in at the moment. It's showing leadership to the same as Afghanistan or Iraq an arm's length conflict, but this is not an arm's length conflict. It's a much more subtle hybrid war that is going on in more clever ways than we want to address. And as I like your point about that at the moment we are totally reactive, and that is no good whatsoever, because we're allowing Putin to take the initiative and to make the decisions that he wants to make all the time, instead of actually doing things that upset him, that upset his team, that upset everybody around him, so that they get rid of him.
Exactly. I like your way of thinking, because they do everything not to upset. They did not close the sky over Ukraine in the beginning because they didn't want to upset Putin. And many things we doing here against my personal will because we don't want to upset Putin. And if you remember, many times in the beginning, we still could hear that line, oh yeah, we're thinking about the victory of Ukraine. Now it disappears. That line is not here anymore. We just hear from our administration, oh yeah, we're gonna stay with you as long as it takes. In the beginning, it was 72 hours. And this is all they gave us. After they discover, oh, it's gonna be a little bit different, they still talking about, yeah, we stay with you, but word victory, great victory of Ukraine, simply disappeared. And I personally think I'm not happy with what our administration here doing. As we said, we appreciate for help, but that help is like IV dropping help. It's not enough to do what's supposed to be done. And in my understanding, if you want to have that war completed cheaper, less damage, less casualties, we can do it yesterday. Of course, if we come together, if we have strong decision, we have to have our target, our destiny, how we want to end that war. And of course, war cannot be just ended. It's supposed to be won, and it's supposed to be won by Ukraine in a great way. But to me, yes, but to me, like as an American citizen, I have a ton of questions to my president, because I believe he is not doing what he's supposed to do. He is not consolidating help for Ukraine around the world mentally, I mean, because now whole world, at least half of world, blaming Ukraine because we don't want to stop that war. No. We have to change our accent. Subject supposed to be about Russia, not about why Ukraine doesn't do this and that, like we read in our article written by our president.
I think there's a problem around the White House in that there are no clear policies on this. And I think that that there's obviously infighting in the president's team of those who are cowardly and weak and want to run away, those who are America first and don't want to spend any money, and those who are supporting Ukraine. And I think the trouble is none of them have the upper hand, so there is no clear policy. It just vacillates. It goes on day by day by day, dripping along. But it's not strong enough. I mean, I was glad to see that the military are now going to actually to do some coordinated training properly. But for goodness sakes, I mean, the war's been going on 7 months. That decision should have been made in the first week, and got on with in the first week. And it's this slowness. I mean, I know what everybody says, that America does everything that it can possibly do wrong before it gets to the right answer. But this is killing a lot of Ukrainians, including friends, which is not nice for me. I go back to what I said. I just don't think people are taking this seriously enough. It's just another thing that's going on. I mean, even in UK, which are doing a huge amount. I mean, they're pulling stuff out of the defense forces organization everywhere that they can. I mean, in proportion UK proportionately out of the defence forces, UK has probably given, 50 times more than America has given, even though America has given a lot. If you actually line up what America gave to Afghanistan and Iraq, it's still not, considering this is the difference and the importance of the war, it's still not relative to the importance of the war. So there's lots more things that could be thought of and could be done.
Yes, I even made little calculation example for myself when we're talking about billions, trillions, millions, about help, about support, about spending. I use that example, $300 million every day for 20 years. This is what we were sending to Afghanistan. And then all spending on Ukraine looks like coffee money. And in a way, it started and it happened a year ago. I think it was the biggest shame for America, as I remember. And I felt very uncomfortable watching what's happening in Afghanistan. And not even knowing we're going to have what we now have in Ukraine. You can imagine how much use for that lost weapon and that gift to Taliban we could use in Ukraine. And now I'm sure it was sold to Putin for very, very cheap price, and now it's working against Ukraine. So I believe that Afghanistan...
We haven't seen any of it, to be fair.
Well, good.
We haven't seen any of it on the battlefield, so I'm not sure that's happened yet.
But Afghanistan opened a door for Putin because he probably understood, if I start, nobody gonna really stop me because we don't have watchdog in America anymore. So this is why it started. So I think I should ask you about that second option was when Boris Johnson was offering only Britain, Poland, and Ukraine. You think it's a most favorable way to stay together and watch and trying to protect our countries, or we still need to make like another model of that union?
Well, I think that's a good starting model. I mean, if you want another security sort of organization, but the danger is that you make these security organizations and they don't do anything. So you just have something that is there on paper. The ministers meet, and maybe it creates some sort of better coordination. So if there's going to be coordination of purchasing of weapons, coordination of training, coordination of officer exchange on a serious way, and I mean a serious way, where like we have with UK and US, where UK people actually command American organizations and Americans command British organizations, and that has been highly successful in the past. And I mean, you go to the British Ministry of Defence and there are Americans working there. I might add, there are also Australians, New Zealanders, and the odd Finn. But those things are really important. Now, if we're going to do that, then that's fine. But that also means Ukraine has got to do that. And at the moment, Ukraine is not doing that. Ukraine is still taking a hands-off position with everybody. In other words, everything that we're doing, Britain, is outside of the Ukrainian system, not inside actually working with, because they still have a degree of secrecy, a degree of at the moment, pride. We're going to do this on our own sort of thing. And those things actually stop the developed interaction, which can actually go to take things to the next level. And if you're going to have a relationship with Poland and Britain, then the Ukrainians have got to understand that means Brits and Poles inside the Ministry of Defence and inside the General Staff, not outside as I spent my time when I was working there, outside, not allowed in, and without a minister signing a piece of paper. I mean, genuinely, a minister signing a piece of paper, so you could go in 20 meters into the building for a meeting, to a conference room, escorted by someone to take you in, and escorted by an officer, escorted by an officer in, escorted by an officer out. That still goes on. But the first time I was in there, a colonel had to come to the toilet with me. And I'm not joking about that.
Wow.
Many of those things have not changed. Now, so I come back to it. If you're going to have formal security relationships, they can't be one-sided. It can't be Britain and Poland talking and doing things and Ukraine saying, oh, we'll pick and choose what's nice. If Ukraine wants to be with people, it's got to understand it's got to be with people. And that means NATO. And that means NATO officers inside the Ministry of Defense, doing serious jobs, not sitting, pathetic little jobs, but actually department chiefs and department deputies and in the operations branch and things like this, and in the intelligence cell. Because that's what it means when you have a relationship like that. And to be blunt, Ukraine is nowhere near ready for that at the moment. Mentally, nowhere near ready for it mentally. Even though Zelensky says, we want fast track to NATO, he has no clue what that means. He has no clue what joining NATO means at the moment, what it actually means. It doesn't mean we give you everything and you carry on the way that you are. It's a relationship. It's a marriage.
And responsibility too. Yeah.
Responsibilities with compromise, with, looking after someone else's children sort of thing. It's all the things that you get from this. And the majority of Ukrainians don't understand that part of the deal. So yes, your views of this is, do these things help? My answer is they can do when both sides want to enter the relationship. But Ukraine is still at the stage of we want to keep our girlfriend as well as getting married.
Yeah, we're learning very hard because Ukraine going through, for myself, it looks already like World War III because it's happening right now, 21st size and place, 21st century, middle of Europe, terrible damage. We already have, by casualties, we have more killed civilian people than Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yes,
you have September 11 on every street in some city in Ukraine.
Yes.
And I'm coming to my last question, sir. Why do you think West, collective West, in a way we call it, they still don't want big victorious victory of Ukraine? I mean, yesterday. They don't show us. Are they simply afraid of Russia falling apart or disappearing?
It's nothing to do with Russia falling apart. It's I don't think people even think of it. I mean, like they didn't think about what would happen when we invaded Iraq. So the fact is we've had peace for so long. We've had peace for this huge long time. People have forgotten what war is like. People have forgotten about war. They don't understand it. I mean, Second World War, people understood it because of the First World War. First World War, they understood it because there have been revolutions in 1905 and in other countries, the war in Spain and everything else. So there was a general understanding in the first part of the last century about war, but we haven't had a war for a long time. And so it's not only that they don't understand it, people don't have the tools anymore. Our diplomats don't have the tools. They've lost the tools of how to deal with things like war. It's beyond them. And so you've got all these politicians who only know peacetime. They've only known peace from the time they went to school. And everybody's telling them, compromise, don't argue. Compromise, don't argue. Don't fight with each other. You've got to love each other. You've got to do this. This is very liberal, Western, and soft. And America's just the same. You're just the same in America. And people have just lost the grasp of this, the essential grasp of what it is. And hence, so when you're actually talking about, World War III, people have no concept of what World War III is. They have no concept of what hybrid warfare is. It's a nice word. Hybrid warfare is little green men to most people. It doesn't occur to them it's about buying politicians. It's about bribing politicians. It's about state capture, as in Bulgaria, as in Hungary, as very, very close could have been in Latvia in the last election last weekend. You know, and Putin is digging into these things. And this war is different from any other war in that respect, because, you know, up to the Second World War, war was about just punching people and killing people. Now it's much more sophisticated. It's about, as you earlier, it's about oil. It's about buying politicians. It's about stopping trade. It's about, you know, redirecting computer chips to your country via third parties. And he is doing that more successfully than we are, and we're not thinking about it hard enough. We're still not stopping the flow of computer chips. We're allowing American companies to sell them. French,
Yeah.
German companies. It's part of the war, and it's a part of the war that really the politicians haven't actually got their teeth into yet. But to win the fighting war, we've got to get our teeth into those things. But I go back to your point at the beginning, are people frightened? They're only frightened of one thing, you know, being involved, being really involved in it. They don't want to be. They want to do it hands off because they've had peace and nice, you know, going skiing, playing football, watching football at the weekend. They've had this for so long, they've forgotten about doing something seriously for your country. Luckily, Ukrainians haven't. Luckily for the rest of us, Ukrainians haven't. But I'm not sure some of the countries have the capacity to do that anymore. I'm not sure the populations have the capacity to do that anymore, that they're rough enough. Britain has. We're still, you know, we've still got the roughness. I don't know how I can describe it, but it is. It's
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
We've
Yes.
still got that roughness in the population. People still punch each other.
Because you still remember those bombs over Great Britain. You still remember the war, the same as Europe remembers.
And we had Northern Ireland as well. And you know, we had
Yeah.
up in the streets, and it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago. You know, I mean, the 70s and 80s, people were still being killed. You know, I mean, Margaret Thatcher was blown up.
Yeah.
So these things are still within living memory in our country.
Yeah.
Other countries just haven't got anything of the same sharpness to, and those who have got a bit of it seem to have forgotten it already. Anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, even here in the United States, I think people spoiled by peace. They worry about totally different things, and their imagination is not good enough to understand what Ukrainian people going through. I have family there, I have friends, I communicate every day live, and I see those pictures, I listen to conversations. I still, even myself, I cannot really believe it's happening because it looks like terrible action movie. And it's really, really, and world has to understand, Ukraine was a pillow, like buffer pillow for Europe for a long time, after 2014 even. And now we're still working as a pillow, as a protective system for whole Europe, maybe for whole world. And more people understand that, more help and more support we're gonna get, of course. And we do appreciate all help from Great Britain, from Boris Johnson, and now we expect even more from your new Premier Minister. It's actually good news. You have your country in a good hands, I think.
She may not last long. We've just had the Conservative Party conference, and she didn't do very well.
Wow.
So it could be interesting in the coming weeks. No, seriously.
Please do something to keep her.
But I think in general, I think that the majority of politicians in the British Parliament and the government are very, very pro-Ukraine. I mean, I haven't read or seen anything against what people are doing. If anything, it's you know, the people would like to do more. So you know, I don't think we're in a problem, even if we change prime minister 3 or 4 times more. And even the opposition party is very positive.
Okay.
So I think that, you know, Ukraine is going to get its support from UK. And if it doubt at them.
Good to know. Thank you. I want to thank you, sir, for your time, for your help for Ukraine. I know you're going to Ukraine next week. I'm not going to ask you what you're doing here, but I know you're doing good. You're helping us, and don't even tell us, maybe later after the war. But we appreciate your input. We appreciate your contacts, and to be a defense expert of Baltic Security Foundation, I believe you have a whole picture, and we just pray for people like you helping us, understanding us, and bringing peace to Ukraine and bringing our victory. We still expect, my hope is by the end of the year, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I know it's going to happen very soon, especially after that great fire we were watching all night. I couldn't sleep. I was like, oh my God, video, picture. I'm trying to understand how it happened. Finally, I quit. I just like, I'm happy it happened. And we will think about it later. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. We will see you probably very soon. I like talking to you, and I like listening to your wisdom and learn about your experience. Diaspora UA saying goodbye to Mr. Glen Grant and to you. Please share us, please show your support and like our video, and we're gonna bring you better and interesting information every day as we can. Thank you. Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Glory to Ukraine and glory to Great Britain.
You're absolutely right. Glory to heroes.